People still remember the exact moment it happened, even if they can't immediately explain why. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic in the way jump scares usually are. There was no scream, no sudden movement meant to shock the audience. Yet the second Lena and Miu shared that scene, something shifted. Viewers leaned closer to their screens without realizing it. Comments slowed. Replays started. And a strange, shared feeling spread across the internet, unease mixed with fascination. What made the moment so unsettling was how ordinary it looked at first. The lighting was soft, the setting familiar. Lena stood where she was supposed to stand. Miu followed the blocking exactly as rehearsed. On paper, nothing was out of place. But when their eyes met, there was a pause that felt too long, too heavy. Not scripted long, human long. The kind of silence that makes you feel like you walked into a room in the middle of a conversation that wasn't meant for you. Viewers later said it felt like watching something private by accident. That's when the clip began to circulate. Not as a highlight, not as a romantic edit, but as a question. People posted it with captions like, "Does this feel weird to anyone else?" Or, "Why does this scene make me uncomfortable?" And once that door opened, millions walked through it. The creepiest part wasn't fear. It was recognition. People recognized the look Lena gave Miu, not as an actress performing, but as a person reacting. Her expression flickered for half a second, something unreadable passing through her eyes. Miu responded almost imperceptibly, his jaw tightening, his breath changing just enough for sharp-eyed viewers to notice. That micro-moment wasn't written anywhere. It wasn't directed. But it landed harder than any scripted twist. Suddenly, fans weren't watching characters anymore. They were watching two people share a moment they didn't fully control. That's why the scene refused to fade. Psychologists online weighed in, explaining how the human brain reacts strongly to unresolved emotional cues. When something feels real but isn't explained, the mind fills in the gaps. That's exactly what happened here. The lack of clarity made the moment grow larger with every rewatch. People slowed the footage. They zoomed in. They compared it to other scenes filmed the same day. And what they noticed only deepened the discomfort. In scenes before and after, Lena and Miu were perfectly in sync. Professional. Grounded. But in that one viral moment, the rhythm broke. Lena blinked more than usual. Miu hesitated before speaking his next line. It was subtle, but once you saw it, you couldn't unsee it. Crew members later hinted, carefully, that something unexpected had happened on set that day. Not something dangerous, not dramatic, just something emotionally unplanned. A miscommunication. A line delivered differently. A look held too long. And because cameras were rolling, it stayed. The director didn't call cut immediately. That decision changed everything. By the time the scene ended, the atmosphere had shifted. Even viewers who didn't consciously notice the details felt it in their bodies. Goosebumps, tight chests, that instinctive feeling that something real had slipped through the cracks of fiction. And the internet reacts strongly to authenticity, especially when it isn't comfortable. The clip went viral not because people understood it, but because they didn't. Horror fans compared it to unsettling movie moments where nothing bad happens, yet the tension is unbearable. Others described it as watching two magnets pull toward each other and then stop just before contact. That almost touch, that almost confession energy, created unease rather than satisfaction. Lena later mentioned in an interview that some scenes linger with actors longer than expected. She didn't name the moment. She didn't need to. Fans knew. Her voice shifted slightly when she spoke about emotional honesty on set. Miu, when asked about intense scenes, said something that sent chills through the fandom. He said the hardest moments are the ones you don't prepare for. That line alone reignited the conversation. People started connecting dots. Not in a conspiracy-driven way, but in a human one. They began to ask not what happened, but how it felt. And that's where the creepiness deepened, because feelings are harder to categorize than facts. Some viewers said the scene reminded them of moments in their own lives, times when something unspoken hung heavy in the air. A look from someone that changed everything. A silence that said more than words ever could. The discomfort came from familiarity. This wasn't fictional fear. It was emotional exposure. As edits spread across platforms, reactions became more intense. Some fans admitted they couldn't watch the scene late at night. Others said it made their stomach drop every time, even though they knew nothing bad would happen. That kind of reaction isn't normal for a standard dramatic moment. It suggests the body is responding before the mind can rationalize. That's why the moment stayed viral long after newer clips tried to replace it. The lack of explanation turned it into a shared mystery. And unlike scandals or rumors, this mystery didn't damage anyone. It just lingered, quietly, persistently, waiting to be felt again. People noticed that Lena and Miu never recreated that exact energy in later scenes. The chemistry was still there, but controlled, polished, as if both were careful not to let that rawness slip through again. That contrast only made the original moment feel more isolated and more real. Behind the scenes, actors are trained to repeat emotions safely. But sometimes, something happens once and can't be summoned again without losing its truth. Fans sensed that this was one of those moments. That's what makes it unsettling. Not because it was dark, but because it was unrepeatable. As time passed, the scene became a reference point. Whenever discussions about authenticity in acting came up, people brought it back. Whenever someone talked about moments that feel too real, that clip resurfaced. It wasn't categorized as romance, drama, or horror. It existed in its own space, and that space made people uncomfortable in the best way. The creepiness didn't come from danger. It came from vulnerability leaking into a controlled environment. From the realization that even in scripted worlds, something unscripted can happen and be seen by millions. Viewers still talk about it because it reminds them that cameras don't just capture performances. They capture people. And sometimes, people reveal more than they intend to. Lena and Miu never addressed the moment directly. That silence became part of its power. By not explaining it away, they allowed it to remain intact. Untouched, unresolved. And unresolved moments live longer in the mind than neatly wrapped conclusions. Every time someone new discovers the clip, the cycle starts again. The pause, the discomfort, the comments asking, "Did you feel that too?" And the replies flooding in from people who watched it years ago and never forgot. That's how you know a moment has crossed from viral into something deeper. It stopped being content. It became a shared experience. And maybe that's why viewers still talk about Lena and Miu's creepiest viral moment. Not because it scared them, but because it reminded them how thin the line is between acting and being seen. Once that line blurs, even for a second, the feeling doesn't go away. It stays with you. And even now, long after the algorithms have moved on and newer clips compete for attention, that moment refuses to disappear. It resurfaces quietly, often late at night, reposted by someone encountering it for the first time. The caption is almost always the same in spirit, if not in words. Why does this feel so unsettling? Am I the only one who felt something here? And every time, the answers come flooding back. No, you're not the only one. What makes the moment endure is that it doesn't give the brain a place to rest. There is no clear emotion to label it. It isn't fear in the traditional sense. It isn't romance either. It lives somewhere in between, in that uncomfortable space where emotion hasn't chosen a shape yet. The human mind dislikes that kind of uncertainty, so it keeps returning, hoping that one more watch will finally make it make sense. But it never does. Some fans began comparing the scene to real-life situations where instincts speak before logic. That feeling when you walk into a room and immediately sense tension without knowing why. Or when someone looks at you and you realize, too late, that something has shifted. Nothing visible has changed, yet everything feels different. The body knows before the mind catches up. That's exactly what the Lena and Miu moment triggered. Film analysts later pointed out that the camera angle contributed to the unease. The shot lingered just slightly longer than audiences are conditioned for. The frame didn't cut away to offer relief. There was no music cue to guide emotion. The silence forced viewers to sit inside the moment without instruction. And when an audience isn't told how to feel, they often feel everything at once, discomfort included. What's rarely discussed is how brave it was to leave that scene in the final cut. In most productions, moments that feel too raw are smoothed out. Retakes are done. Edits tighten pauses. Emotional edges are softened for clarity. But this one slipped through untouched. Whether by instinct or accident, It was allowed to remain exactly as it happened. That choice turned a fleeting second into something permanent. Actors often talk about the danger of being too present on set. When you drop fully into a moment without protection, you risk revealing something you didn't plan to share. It's emotionally risky. And once it's captured on camera, you can't take it back. Many believe that's why the energy between Lena and Miu shifted slightly afterward. Not colder, just more guarded, as if both understood they had crossed an invisible line together. Viewers sensed that boundary immediately. The scenes that followed were technically perfect, but something ineffable was missing. Not because the connection weakened, but because it had been contained. The rawness had been acknowledged and then gently locked away. That only made the original moment more powerful. People began asking why certain scenes feel safe while others don't. Why some performances wash over us while others stay lodged in the chest. The answer often comes down to control. When performers control a scene, the audience relaxes. When control slips, even briefly, the audience feels exposed alongside them. That exposure is what people describe as creepy. Not because it's wrong, but because it's intimate without permission. The moment also challenged how fans view performance itself. It blurred the boundary between character and actor in a way that couldn't be easily separated. Viewers weren't sure who they were watching anymore, and that uncertainty lingered long after the scene ended. That's why discussions around it became more reflective over time. Less about gossip, more about meaning. People talked about vulnerability, about emotional honesty, about how rare it is to witness something unfiltered in a polished industry. The creepiness transformed into respect, even awe. Because not everyone can hold a moment like that. Lena and Miu never capitalized on it. They didn't tease it. They didn't reference it playfully. Their silence suggested awareness, perhaps even protectiveness. Some moments aren't meant to be dissected endlessly. Some are meant to be left alone, allowed to exist as they are. That restraint gave the moment dignity. Years later, when asked about scenes that challenged them emotionally, both spoke about the importance of trust on set. Trust between actors. Trust in the environment. Trust in knowing when to step back. Fans couldn't help but hear those words through the lens of that viral scene. It reframed everything. The creepiness wasn't a mistake. It wasn't something gone wrong. It was something real that happened once and refused to be replicated. And perhaps that's why it still holds power. In a world oversaturated with content engineered for reaction, Lena and Miu's moment stands apart because it wasn't engineered at all. It wasn't optimized. It wasn't explained. It simply existed, and in existing, it revealed something uncomfortable and deeply human. That is why people still talk about it. That is why new viewers still feel it. And that is why, no matter how many times it's watched, it never loses its edge. Because some moments aren't meant to comfort. They're meant to remind us that even behind scripts and cameras, people can still be seen. And once you've seen that, even for a second, it's impossible to forget.